The gunshot echoed through the parking garage. At least, that's what Richard Hayes thought he'd heard. His heart leapt. His hand froze on the handle of his sleek black Cadillac Escalade. But the garage was silent. Eerily so, except for a tiny voice behind him. "Don't move. Don't say a word." Richard spun, his stomach tightening. The voice wasn't coming from behind him. It was coming from inside his car. He pulled the door open cautiously. There, huddled in the back seat, was a little black girl, maybe 7 years old. Her eyes were wide, her hair messy, her jeans torn. But it wasn't her appearance that froze him. It was the fear in her voice. "They're watching you," she whispered, pointing up at the towering glass headquarters of Hayes Technologies in downtown Chicago. "Your partner and that blonde lady. They said you'll be done by tomorrow." For a man who had built a $300 million tech empire from scratch, Richard Hayes had thought he'd seen everything, but never this. Richard Hayes, 54, was a name in Chicago that carried weight. From South Side kid to tech mogul, his story was in magazines, podcasts, business schools. He trusted few, but those he did, he trusted completely. For 20 years, his partner Daniel Carter had been his right hand. For 12 years, his executive assistant Melissa Grant had run his life like clockwork. And now, apparently, both were plotting his downfall. Richard slid into the driver's seat, keeping his voice calm. "How did you get in here?" The janitor left it open. "I heard them upstairs. They were laughing about you." Her voice cracked slightly, but her eyes burned with defiance. "They said tomorrow you won't own anything, that you'll just sign papers like a fool, and by the next day you'll be looking for a job." Richard's gut clenched. Tomorrow was the merger signing with a Silicon Valley firm, worth nearly $500 million. A deal Daniel and Melissa had orchestrated from day one. "And why are you telling me this?" he asked quietly. The girl shrugged. "Because my grandma always said, if you see somebody getting crushed, and you can help, you help. Next time, it could be you." For a moment, Richard Hayes, the man Forbes called Chicago's tech general, felt something he hadn't in years. Humanity. "What's your name?" he asked. "Aaliyah." She hesitated. "And you're Mr. Hayes. They said your name like 100 times. That night, Richard took Aaliyah to a 24-hour diner off Michigan Avenue. She devoured a burger, while he sipped cold coffee. His phone buzzed. "Daniel." Cheerful as always. "Big day tomorrow, Rich. You sign, we celebrate, and you can retire a king." Richard forced a chuckle, masking the storm brewing inside him. Moments later, another message. "Melissa, don't worry about the fine print, boss. Trust me, like always." Richard's hand trembled slightly as he set the phone down. Like always. By morning, Richard had already called in an old contact, Ethan Brooks, a private investigator he once used to vet major deals. Ethan had been fired years earlier at Daniel's request. Now Richard understood why. By noon, Ethan sat in Richard's condo in River North, spreading files across the table. "Your partner and your assistant aren't just backstabbing you," Ethan said grimly. "They're criminals. 2 years of fake contracts, ghost clients, shell companies. They've siphoned over $7 million already. Tomorrow's merger isn't business. It's money laundering. They need your signature to clean it all." Aaliyah, perched on the couch with toast in her hand, frowned. "So, they're stealing, but they're making you the one to blame." Ethan raised an eyebrow at the child, impressed. "Exactly. Sharp kid." Richard leaned back, rage coursing through him. 20 years of friendship, 12 years of loyalty, reduced to betrayal. "You have 2 options," Ethan said. "Go to the police right now and hope it sticks." Or, he paused, a slow grin forming. "Let them trap themselves tomorrow." Aaliyah clapped softly. "Like in the movies. You pretend you don't know anything. Then boom, you show the truth." Richard smiled grimly. The child was braver than most executives he knew. At 2 p.m. sharp the next day, Richard entered the Hayes Technologies conference room. Daniel stood tall, polished, grinning like a politician. Melissa, flawless as ever, had marked the documents with yellow tabs. "All you need to do is sign, Rich," Melissa purred. Like always. But Richard's smile was different this time. "Before I do," he said calmly, "I want to show you something." The doors opened. Ethan walked in with 2 federal agents. He dropped a box of evidence on the table. "What is this?" Daniel barked, his charm cracking. "Proof," Richard said evenly, "of every dollar you stole." Melissa scoffed, her voice trembling. "These are fabrications. Lies." "Funny," Ethan interrupted, pulling out a recorder. "Because this voice sure sounds like you." He pressed play. Melissa's voice filled the room. "Richard's such a sentimental idiot. Tomorrow he'll sign it all away, and we'll finally get everything." Daniel's voice followed. dripping with smugness. 20 years pretending to be his friend. Worth every second when we take him down. The room went dead silent. And then another voice, small but clear. The agents turned as the door opened. Aaliyah walked in, holding Richard's hand. A social worker stood behind her. "Hi, Mr. Daniel," she said innocently. "Remember last night? When you called that man in California and said you were stealing Mr. Richard's company?" Daniel's face turned crimson. Melissa's hands shook violently. You're gonna believe a street kid?" Melissa shrieked. The agent stepped forward. "We don't need to. We already have your voices." Within minutes, Daniel and Melissa were cuffed, their faces pale as marble. Richard watched quietly as they were let out, rage replaced by an odd peace. But the real twist wasn't the betrayal. It came weeks later. Ethan's investigation revealed something stunning. Aaliyah's grandmother, Evelyn Hayes, was Richard's aunt. Estranged from the family decades earlier, she had lived and died quietly, raising Aaliyah until her passing. Richard stared at the documents in disbelief. Bloodline. This girl, who had risked everything for him, wasn't just a stranger. She was family. The adoption papers were signed 3 months later. 5 years later, Hayes Technologies was one of the top 50 tech firms in the U.S. Richard ran scholarships for underprivileged children across Chicago. At the annual dinner, Aaliyah, now 12, wearing a blazer and sneakers, stood at the podium as the honorary youth director. "Do you know what the best day of my life was?" she asked the crowd. They leaned in. "The day I hid in that car. Because that's the day I didn't just save a company. I found my family." Applause thundered. Richard felt his throat tighten. Betrayal had nearly destroyed him. But it had also given him the one thing he never thought he'd have again: family, purpose, and legacy. Daniel and Melissa had stolen millions. But in the end, they had given Richard Hayes far more than they could ever imagine.